Good morning. I saw on the news the other day that General Chuck Yeager, Brigadier General Chuck Yeager, had died. He was an amazing man. He was 97 years old. He'd been a test pilot, flown in 3 wars, yet lived to 97 years old. Turned out that he had fought in 3 wars, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. He was an amazing pilot. He shot down so many enemy aircraft, he was considered an ace. He married Glennis back in 1945, his wife. He was only 22 years old. They would have a lot of interesting life together. It turned out that being a pilot, he was flying a P-51 Mustang originally. This was before they even had jets, and that's where he became an ace, an incredible, talented pilot. And yet it's fascinating, he wasn't supposed to be a pilot at all. He had graduated high school, did not have any additional education. He was so young, at 18 years old, when he went into the service. No, they wanted someone with more age, more educational experience to go into flight training school. But World War II had broken out, and suddenly we needed pilots. He had been an aircraft mechanic. And since the war was going on and he was an aircraft mechanic, they gave him a chance. And oh, what he did with that chance. He became such an incredible pilot. I think of how often people just don't put themselves in places to get an opportunity. He was there, and he seized it when the moment came. In the end, when the war was over, he came back to Edwards Air Force Base. And it was at Edwards Air Force Base in 1945. He became a test pilot and began flying more and more experimental aircraft and being a flight instructor. But the United States was working hard to create aircraft, now that were going to be jets, that could fly faster than the speed of sound. But everybody had theories about the speed of sound. You couldn't get past it. It was a barrier. And when planes had gotten up there and got going faster and faster, they would start shaking and buffing. And quite often, they would come apart and they would crash. Pilots would be killed. No, it was an elusive challenge, and no one knew what was on the other side of such turbulent air. In the end, there was a man, Charles Slick Goodwin. He went by Slick. They asked him to fly and try to break the sound barrier. Most pilots were now becoming afraid. And they asked him if he would fly it, and he agreed to do it if they would pay him $150,000. Now, in 1947, that was equal to about $1.7 million. That's what he wanted, to put his life on the line to go up and break the sound barrier. But Chuck Yeager volunteered. He was a pilot, and a really good pilot, an ace, but he'd do it for flight pay, no special money. 2 days before he was supposed to go fly this flight, he was out riding horses with his wife Glennis, and they were riding fast and having fun when he fell off and broke 2 ribs. He went to a civilian doctor. He didn't want anybody to know. He had broken the ribs. They taped him up. But when he moved his right arm, it was in such pain. Only his friend and a fellow pilot knew. And he went to his fellow pilot and asked him, "I need help. I don't have enough strength to be able to close the hatch." And so he rigged up a broomstick that kind of came up longer that he could reach and with his left hand have enough leverage to close it. He was the only one who knew. It was on October the 14th, 1947, that he climbed into this Bell X-1 beneath the belly of this big plane that flew him up high, and then they dropped. He kicked in the afterburners, and he went shooting across the sky. And as he was shooting across the sky, getting closer and closer, the plane began to buffet, and it began to shake. And the question was, do you throttle back? Are you going to come apart? Is it going to break up? He didn't throttle back. And suddenly, there was this huge boom. And he was through the sound barrier. And he said it was slick as glass. So smooth as he went streaking across the sky. I'll never forget the first time I went to the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. Got to see the Apollo 11 space capsule that carried Neil Armstrong to the moon. But right there beside it was this Bell X-1, painted orange. It's named Glamorous Glennis, after his wife. And I stood there beside the plane and I thought, how often we buffer and shake and life becomes so scary, and we have to decide, are we going to continue to push on and trust in God's grace to lead us into the future, or do we back down out of fear and not try? He punched through the hole. It was like flying, he said, through jello. And yet most people were afraid to try. I think of the words in Isaiah when he said, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my victorious right hand." Don't be afraid to confront those problems. My guess is it's God who will uphold you as you punch through and discover it's like flying through jello. Have a great day.